Every day, thousands of ships quietly cross a narrow strip of water in Southeast Asia. Most people never notice. Financial markets rarely mention it. News headlines seldom discuss it. Yet without this corridor, modern Asia would look very different. Factories would slow, energy prices would rise, supply chains would fracture. Entire industries would begin searching for alternatives that barely exist. Because hidden beneath the surface of globalization lies a simple reality. The world's largest economies do not move by themselves. They move through infrastructure. And some pieces of infrastructure are so important that civilization quietly organizes itself around them. The Strait of Malacca is one of those places. A narrow passage, a global dependency, a silent machine that keeps East Asia alive. At first glance, the Strait of Malacca appears surprisingly ordinary. A narrow body of water, a familiar shipping lane, a place few people could even locate on a map. But geography has a habit of hiding extraordinary power inside ordinary places. For centuries, this corridor connected civilizations. Today, it connects industrial economies. Nearly everything moving between the Indian Ocean and East Asia eventually encounters this passage. Oil from the Middle East, natural gas, microchips, steel, automobiles, consumer electronics, food. Modern globalization does not simply pass through Malacca, it depends on Malacca. Not because someone designed it that way, but because efficiency always attracts more efficiency. Every successful route attracts more investment. Every investment attracts more trade. And eventually, a shortcut becomes an indispensable artery of civilization.
This story is not about a strait. It is about a system. No international organization instructed the world to depend on this corridor. No government forced companies to concentrate their trade here. The dependency emerged naturally. Every shipping company searched for lower costs. Every manufacturer searched for shorter delivery times. Every investor searched for greater efficiency. Millions of independent decisions produced one collective architecture. An architecture where one narrow passage quietly supports one of the largest concentrations of economic activity on Earth. And once an entire system depends on a single connection, that connection stops being geography. It becomes leverage. It becomes strategy. It becomes power.
Every complex system contains a bottleneck. Every electrical grid depends on critical substations. Every cloud platform depends on physical data centers. Every financial system depends on trusted settlement networks. Global trade is no different. Cargo does not travel randomly. It follows predictable corridors. Corridors refined through decades of economics, insurance models, engineering, political stability, and commercial incentives. Each shipping company independently chooses the most efficient route. Each manufacturer independently minimizes transportation costs. Each investor independently rewards greater efficiency. Eventually, millions of independent decisions converge upon the same corridor. No one planned the dependency, yet everyone helped create it. The Strait of Malacca did not become powerful because someone declared it important. It became powerful because efficiency continuously concentrated around it. That is how choke points are born, not through force, but through optimization. Modern economies do not begin with factories. They begin with energy. Every semiconductor plant, every steel mill, every logistics warehouse, every financial district consumes enormous amounts of power. Much of that energy begins its journey thousands of kilometers away. Oil extracted in the Persian Gulf, natural gas loaded onto LNG carriers, petroleum products crossing the Indian Ocean. Before reaching East Asia, much of it passes through Malacca. This means the strait does not merely transport ships, it transports industrial capacity, economic confidence, manufacturing output, and national growth. A delay of several hours may appear insignificant. A disruption lasting several days begins affecting refinery schedules, power generation, shipping contracts, commodity pricing, and industrial planning. Because modern economies are synchronized, when energy arrives late, everything else follows.
Many people assume ships can simply choose another route. In theory, they can. Reality is more complicated. Alternative routes require more distance, more fuel, more crew time, higher insurance costs, longer delivery schedules, and greater uncertainty. Global trade is not optimized around possibility. It is optimized around predictability. Manufacturers schedule production months ahead. Ports allocate docking windows. Rail operators coordinate inland transportation. Warehouses calculate inventory turnover. Banks finance shipments according to expected arrival dates. Every additional day introduces friction. Every unexpected delay introduces cost. That is why geography alone does not determine value. Predictability does. The Strait of Malacca is valuable, not because alternatives do not exist, but because alternatives cannot easily compete with the efficiency the system has spent decades building. The world's supply chains are not trapped by geography, they are locked into architecture.
Modern supply chains were never designed to survive prolonged disruption. They were designed to eliminate waste. Warehouses became smaller. Inventory became leaner. Factories synchronized production. Shipping companies optimized schedules. Ports reduced idle time. Every shipment was expected to arrive exactly when it was needed. Capital no longer remained trapped inside warehouses. Inventory became information. Time became currency. Every unnecessary day became unnecessary cost. The result was extraordinary productivity, but every improvement carried an invisible trade-off. The smaller the margin for delay, the greater the impact when delay finally arrived. The Strait of Malacca quietly exposed that reality. The stronger the system became, the more dependent it became on uninterrupted flow. No corporation controls the Strait of Malacca. No country owns global trade. No institution commands every shipping company. Yet dependency still emerged. Every executive approved another shipment. Every logistics manager selected the fastest route. Every investor rewarded higher efficiency. Every manufacturer reduced transportation costs. Every decision appeared rational. Every decision appeared independent. But systems do not measure individual decisions. Systems measure collective outcomes. When millions of rational decisions point toward the same destination, dependency quietly becomes architecture. Architecture becomes leverage. And leverage becomes geopolitical influence. The greatest systems are rarely built by one designer. They emerge from countless participants, following the same incentives. Power is rarely distributed evenly. It concentrates, sometimes inside financial centers, sometimes inside technology platforms, sometimes inside legal institutions, and sometimes inside geography itself. The Strait of Malacca is not merely a body of water. It is a strategic intersection where energy, manufacturing, finance, shipping, and geopolitics briefly become one system. Remove one connection, and thousands of other connections begin to weaken. Because complexity does not eliminate dependency, it reorganizes dependency. The more interconnected civilization becomes, the more valuable certain locations become, not because they are large, but because everything else quietly depends on them.
The greatest lesson of the Strait of Malacca is not about Southeast Asia. It is about civilization itself. Modern prosperity is built upon invisible architecture, infrastructure, rules, standards, institutions, corridors, networks. Most people believe wealth is created inside factories, or financial markets, or technology companies. Those systems matter, but beneath all of them exists another layer, the layer that allows every other system to function. The world's economy is not one enormous machine. It is thousands of interconnected systems, linked together through a surprisingly small number of critical connections. Those connections form what we call the choke point grid, a hidden architecture where geography becomes infrastructure, infrastructure becomes dependency, dependency becomes leverage, and leverage becomes power.
The Strait of Malacca is not an exception. It is a pattern. Across the planet, civilization quietly depends on narrow corridors. A handful of canals, a handful of straits, a handful of pipelines, a handful of ports, a handful of semiconductor factories, a handful of subsea cables, a handful of satellites. Modern civilization appears enormous, but beneath that scale, its foundations remain surprisingly concentrated. Once you recognize that pattern, maps stop becoming geography. They become infrastructure. Infrastructure becomes dependency. Dependency becomes leverage. And leverage becomes geopolitical power. Understanding one choke point is the beginning. Understanding the entire network is how you begin to understand the architecture of civilization itself. Today, we followed one strait. Next time, we will uncover another system, because every crisis reveals an architecture. Every dependency reveals a hidden design. Every rule reveals an incentive. And every incentive reveals where power quietly accumulates. If you want to understand the invisible systems that organize global trade, shape financial markets, govern technological dominance, and quietly influence the future of nations, subscribe to NEXERA, because understanding wealth begins by understanding systems, and understanding systems begins by seeing the architecture beneath the surface. The world is often described as a collection of nations, but nations are only the visible layer. Beneath them lie systems, networks, institutions, infrastructure, invisible frameworks connecting billions of people through law, technology, energy, capital, and movement. The deeper you understand those systems, the more clearly you understand the world itself, because history is not shaped only by presidents, or prime ministers, or billionaires. History is shaped by the invisible architecture that allows civilization to function. This is NEXERA, decoding systems, architecting wealth.